Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Carlos Herabberto Mendoza Martinez?
Not right off, sir. No.
Okay. Sheriff, you should.
Welcome back to Freedom Forge, where we defend liberty and speak truth to power every single day. If you love your country and believe in protecting our Constitution, you are in the right place. So do me a quick favor right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you stay on top of every new episode where we stand up for patriots like you. Today, we have something that every American should be concerned about, a Senate hearing that exposes critical failures and, frankly, dangerous priorities when it comes to public safety and immigration enforcement.
Sheriff, you're Sheriff of Durham County.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful parish. Or we call our counties parishes, beautiful county. Is it at least part of your job to protect the public?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You believe that vetting people at the border is racist, do you not?
I'm sorry?
You believe that vetting people at the border is racist, do you not?
No, I've never said that. I believe that having secure borders is important, and we have processes that allow individuals to come into the country the right way. Absolutely.
You believe that people should be able to violate federal immigration laws without consequences, don't you?
No, sir, I do not. I believe that anyone who violates federal or state law needs to be held accountable, and there need to be consequences.
You don't believe in cooperating with ICE, do you?
I believe in cooperating with federal authorities, as I do. A number of federal agencies I cooperate with, and I certainly would cooperate with ICE if they would cooperate with me.
Okay. You were elected in 2018, Sheriff, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. On April 18, 2018, you gave an interview with a media organization called Indie Week. Do you remember that?
I'm familiar with the paper, yes.
Okay. Here's what you said. I'm quoting you, your words, not mine. I disagree with the incumbent sheriffs. That's the guy you beat. With the incumbent sheriff's cooperation with ICE. I will make a clear and uncompromising commitment to not cooperate with ICE. As sheriff, I will not honor ICE detainers, and we will not participate in ICE roundups, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In April of last year, you spoke to a group of ICE employees. Do you remember that?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, well, there was an article in a media organization, a media entity called the Assembly. Are you familiar with them? Do you remember?
I've heard of the Assembly, yes.
Yeah, do you remember giving them an interview?
I give several interviews.
Sure. Yeah.
I actually don't remember that particular one, but I'm...
Okay. Well, here's what you said in the interview, apparently on the record. These ICE employees that you spoke to, you were referencing them, and you said, quote, they, these ICE officials, asked me, so Sheriff, if someone is about to be released from your jail and the detainer is about to expire, you will call us and let us know? What was my answer, you said? No, because that's not what the law says. No, I will not call ICE. End quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
And, sir, Senator, that was before the new law, which is now House Bill 318, which requires me to make that second phone call.
Right. Yeah.
Prior to that, it was not state law, which I follow and all my deputies follow.
Sure.
And so now we do make that second phone call. But ICE agents are notified whenever someone is entered processed into my jail.
Do you need some water? Because I think your pants are on fire.
Okay.
Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Carlos Herabberto Mendoza Martinez?
Not right off, sir, no.
Okay. Sheriff, you should. He was in our country illegally from Mexico. He was in a street gang. Back in Mexico, he was convicted of manslaughter. And he was in your jail. And because in 2021 and 2024, Mr. Martinez was arrested for assaulting a woman and domestic violence. And ICE placed a detainer on this guy because he was in our country illegally. And he was a criminal. And he was in your jail. And you wouldn't honor that detainer, would you?
I can't say that I did not honor the detainer.
I can.
I can say what I did honor was the conditions of the release that were issued by a judge. And so therefore, and once again, ICE was notified that they could come pick up this individual.
Do you really believe in public safety?
Yes, sir, I do.
You would allow someone in our country, illegally, convicted of manslaughter, convicted of domestic violence, in your jail. ICE says, please hold him when his time is up. We want to get this criminal out of our country. And you said no.
ICE was notified that they could come pick up the individual, and for some reason they did not. And the judge issued the conditions of release. I am a custodian. I do not determine who is released or held. I follow the court's order.
Sheriff, I don't mean any disrespect, but you ought to be ashamed of that. How can you possibly be for public safety if you hate our immigration laws so much that you would let a convicted murderer back on the street? Do you really hate immigration laws that much?
Senator, it's not a matter of that I hate immigration law.
You could have fooled me, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your service.
Let me set the stage for what you're about to see. This is a real back-and-forth exchange between a U.S. Senator and the Sheriff of Durham County, who, by the way, represents one of the largest communities in North Carolina. The central issue in this hearing is whether or not sheriffs like him are actually protecting American citizens, or if they're more worried about the feelings of illegal immigrants and the political narratives fueling the left's agenda. Now, let's be clear. This is not just about one sheriff. This reflects a troubling, wider trend across America. Left-leaning officials, often in positions of power, putting ideology over the duty to enforce the law and protect the public. And as you'll hear, this sheriff's answers and his evasions will make your blood boil if you care about law and order. The hearing starts with a simple premise. Is a sheriff's #1 job to protect the public? Of course, he says yes. But almost immediately, it becomes obvious there's a disconnect between what the law demands and what's actually being done. When asked about vetting at the border, the sheriff tries to distance himself from accusations of calling such policies racist. But here's the problem with his rhetoric. It's all designed to appease the left, to avoid being called names, instead of standing firmly on the cornerstone of national security and public safety. He's pressed on whether or not federal immigration laws should be enforced, and he quickly states that he believes in accountability. But actions speak louder than words. His record, as made clear by the senator, shows a steady opposition to cooperating with ICE, our nation's frontline immigration enforcement agency. The sheriff tries to dodge and deflect, saying he'll work with any federal agency, but his own public statements contradict him. Now let's look at the facts. This sheriff was elected on a promise not to cooperate with ICE, not to honor ICE detainers, and not to participate in efforts to remove criminal illegals from our society. We're talking about public statements, campaign promises, and actions taken since he got the job. When the senator reads out a quote from his 2018 interview, the sheriff admits, yes, that's exactly what he said. He explicitly refused to cooperate with ICE. Then there's the jaw-dropping moment when they discuss House Bill 318, the new law that finally forces sheriffs in North Carolina to notify ICE when criminals who are in the country illegally are being released from jail. The sheriff admits that before this law, he would flat-out refuse to call ICE. He'd just let these criminal illegals walk out the door after serving their state time, with no federal agency informed. Only after being legally required does he now bother to make the second phone call. And the senator doesn't let it drop there. He brings up a specific example, a real person, Carlos Herabberto Mendoza Martinez. Here's someone in the country illegally, convicted of manslaughter in Mexico, arrested for domestic violence here in America, and ICE put a detainer on him. They said, "We want to take this violent criminal off the streets." The sheriff's response? He chose to let that man walk because a judge ordered his release, and the sheriff wouldn't go the extra mile to ensure federal agents were there at that door to take custody. Let's be clear, this isn't some minor paperwork technicality. This is public safety. This is the difference between a dangerous criminal staying off the streets or being released to potentially victimize American citizens yet again. And what do we hear from the sheriff? Excuses, blame shifting, and legalese. I just follow the judge's orders. Well, what about moral responsibility? What about doing every last thing in your power to protect your community instead of making excuses for why you can't? The sheriff acts as if he's powerless. In reality, he is choosing to interpret the law in a way that gives criminal illegals the benefit of the doubt, rather than the citizens who elected him to keep them safe. Is it any wonder that communities around the nation are seeing a rise in violence, fentanyl, human trafficking, and crime when our top local law enforcement officers refuse to work hand-in-hand with the only agencies that can actually deport these dangerous individuals? This exchange should be a wake-up call for every American. When public servants are more afraid of the ACLU or their next election than of failing in their basic responsibilities, then it's time for the people to step up and demand accountability. Public safety must come first, not political correctness. Look, nobody is saying we shouldn't have an orderly process for those who want to become part of the American dream. But every sovereign nation, every state, every county has the fundamental right and moral duty to keep their citizens safe. If you cross the border illegally, commit violent crimes, you should expect every agency, from local sheriff to federal IC, to work together to make sure you don't see the light of day in our communities again. If you agree, if you think sanctuary policies are destroying law and order, if you believe sheriffs should serve the law and not the latest politically correct narrative, then make your voice heard. Let's put an end to the madness of refusing to cooperate with ICE. Let's elect leaders who aren't afraid to do what's right, who put the security of Americans above everything else. Share this video. Call your representatives. Make it known that you want leaders who honor their oath to protect and defend, not to twist the law. Every inch of ground we give up to this kind of weak-on-crime ideology is another step toward the destruction of our way of life. Thanks for watching, Patriots. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave a comment below with your thoughts and your own experiences. Together, we are the firewall between chaos and order. This is Freedom Forge, and we will never back down. See you on the next one.